long, fatal love chase by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 9. The chase begins. High up in the 6th story of one of the tall old houses in the Rue Napoleon, at her attic window, sat a woman sewing. Not a grisette, for the bare, neat room showed none of the ruling tastes of that industrious but coquettish sisterhood. No birdcage, no pot of flowers at the window, no bit of cheap muslin festooned with pink cambric rosettes over the tiny mirror, no gay picture of some favourite actor or lover opposite the crucifix at the bed's head, or any glimpse of Sunday finery on chair or table. A glance at the woman would have settled that point at once, for, though beautiful, the face was pale and worn, the mouth almost stern in its lines, the eyes absent and mournful, the whole figure suggestive of one burdened with a heavy sorrow against which she struggled bravely. It was a dull November day, the month of suicides, as they call it in Paris, and if ever sad, solitary women, worn out with ill-paid labour or driven to desperation by want or sin or wrong, were to choose a day for ending hopeless lives, that would have been a fitting one. Bleak, cold, and foggy, there were frequent showers that made the street a sea of mud, and those who walked there forlorn objects. Nothing was visible from that high window but a leaden sky and a row of squalid houses opposite. But as her eye turned from her work, Rosamond saw only the sunny gardens of Valrosa, or the blue waves of the sea beating round her tower on the cliff. Nearly 9 months had passed since she fled away and faced the world alone. On that dreadful night, as she went on and on to meet her fate, she had done her best to be prepared for it as far as possible. In Paris was a kind old woman who had taken her fancy on a former visit, and whom she had served by procuring her work, thereby earning her gratitude. Mother Pujol, as her neighbours called her, was a lace-mender, a cheery, busy, honest little woman, and to her Rosamond resolved to go, for to none of the delightful friends of an hour would she confide her downfall. The old woman had welcomed her, given her a refuge, and as time went on without any alarm, she ventured out. Being unwilling to spend her little all in idleness, Rose took up her needle, thinking sadly of the time when she had rejected bands and gussets and seams as unbearable. Now she earned her bread by them, and when the first shock of her double loss had been lessened by absence, time, and labour, she fell into a dull, cold mood, and like a beautiful machine sat at her work day after day with no hope, no fear, no care for anything. Yes, one wish she did cherish, to know where Tempest was. Why he had not followed and found her was a mystery, for he was not a man to submit tamely to any loss, however well-deserved, without a struggle first. Was he dead? Did he still search vainly, or had he forgotten her? These questions she brooded over daily, and lay awake long, tearful nights endeavouring to answer, for in her heart yet lingered love for the hero of her early dreams, not for the man who had deceived and wronged her. Back to him she would never go, but in her lonely life still lived the sweet memory of that happy time when she believed in him, and he was all in all to her. As the last stitch was finished, she folded her work, put on a grey cloak and bonnet with the thick veil without which she never stirred abroad, and with a little basket on her arm went out into the dreary street. It was dark when she returned, and wearily groping her way up the long, unlighted stairs, she unlocked her door, entered, and groped for a match. Turning with a candle dimly burning in her hand, she uttered a loud cry and rushed to the door, for there, seated in her one chair, was Philip Tempest. At last, my little truant, I have found you," he said, rising with a laugh of triumph and a welcoming gesture as he advanced to meet her. "It is fast, Baptiste is without, so be quiet, for escape is impossible, and if you raise the house I'll swear you are mad and carry you away by force. Be wise, my little Rose, and tell me why you so cruelly deserted me. Come, I will listen patiently, and we may find some foolish trifle is to blame for this wearisome separation. He was right. The door would not yield to her desperate hands, and finding flight vain, she composed her startled nerves by remembering that he had no power over her now. This thought steadied her and gave her courage to confront him with indignant eyes but unfaltering voice. The trifle which separates us forever is your wife. Contempt embittered the brief answer, and a defiant look warned him back. He paused with a black frown, though still his eye rested exultingly upon her, and he wore the air of a master who has recovered a runaway slave. Ah, my suspicion was correct then. You heard us when that cursed woman came to Valrosa that last night. Yes, thank God I did. And you believed her? Every word. But if I tell you it was false, and prove it? I should echo her speech. I'll believe nothing, for truth is not in you. Your own lips convicted you, and my own senses are to be trusted, and that night's work cannot be undone. It shall be. I'll not have worked so long in vain. Rose, sooner or later you must come back to me. Never alive. Bah! Let us avoid heroics and talk rationally. Sit here, sweetheart, and give me a kinder welcome than this. He spoke in a softened tone, and gently taking the candle from her, he placed it on the table, drew up the chair, and motioned her to come and take it with unfeigned tenderness in voice and eyes. But she never stirred. With one hand on the door, the other half hidden under her cloak as if some weapon were concealed there, she stood erect, and fixing her steady eyes full upon him, she said in a tone of calm determination, "Do not touch me, or I will end this interview sooner than you wish." Fire or stab as soon as you choose. I'm bullet and dagger-proof, or I should have been dead long ago, he answered, with a scornful smile. You are safe. I had no thought of killing you, she began, with a smile as scornful as his own. Yourself? Did you not once affirm that suicide was cowardly? He asked, with a secret anxiety at her threat. I did, but there are times when it is braver and better to die than to live. This is one of them. Upon my soul, you are complimentary. Why, most unreasonable and hard-hearted of charming women, I have gone far and wide for many months searching for you, and when at last I find the desire of my eyes, you turn upon me like a tiger. It is very becoming, but meekness is better. Don't be thorny, little Rose. It will avail nothing, for love must conquer in the end. Leave sentiment. I'm sick of it, as I know it's worth. How did you find me? The contempt of her glance, the stern command of her voice stung his pride, and for a moment subdued him, for he had never seen her thus, and the new charm arrested him. I'll tell you. Pardon me if I sit while you stand, but I've been ill, and your 5 flights of stairs rather exhausted me. That hint of illness touched her as he knew it would. Her eyes scanned his thin face anxiously, and grew pitiful, for marks of wasting disease were there. Seeing that this stroke succeeded where violence failed, Tempest assumed a quiet, serious air, and simply told his story. When I found you gone, Rose, I was in despair. The balcony explained the manner of your flight, and I at once bethought me of the night train. Which way you had gone was the mystery. 2 clues were found, and unfortunately I took the wrong one. I learned that my wife, as I must call that woman, and her fellow conspirator had gone toward Paris together. Also that young Thomas had joined a tall veiled lady at the station and gone toward Rome. I could not think you would join Marian. Woman's pride would forbid that. I did think that you might have gone with that infatuated boy. But in order to explain this, you must have made some plot beforehand, as there was no time to find him after you left Valrosa. How was it? You thought I was false as well as yourself? A natural conclusion for a man like Philip Tempest. Say what you will, Rose. I'll hear it, for the joy of seeing you again outweighs the pain of your hard words and cruel accusations. Finish, if you please, was her only reply to the plaintive speech and the reproachful look which accompanied it. He bit his lip and went on, with an inward resolve that she should expiate her present defiance by a redoubled devotion thereafter. I knew that all women were fickle, false, and easily won by youth, money, and sweet promises. You had been cold and shy of late, unlike yourself, too obedient and meek to be quite natural, and when I spoke of Toma, you always turned the conversation. These things I recalled after you were gone, and fancied that you had heard nothing, but had hurried your flight because of my proposed departure. I followed, growing sure as I went on that it was you, for everyone confirmed the story of the enamoured youth, the lovely woman, and the evident fear both evinced of being overtaken. Some rumour of pursuit had reached them, and they fled before me till I had chased them all over the continent. Ah, that pleases you, revengeful girl? You enjoy the thought of my fruitless fatigue, my bitter disappointment? I do. It was a just punishment, though too light for your offence. Thank you, amiable love. Do you know, I think I like this new tone of yours. It's stimulating, and as a change really charming now that I am accustomed to it. Toma, it seemed, had run away with a pretty English girl, by way of consoling himself for your coldness. He thought I was her father pursuing them until we met, when I gave him my blessing and advised them to go to Egypt. I had sent Baptiste to Paris when I went toward Rome, and he soon reported that Marian, I won't use the offensive word, we both hate it, had returned to England. It seemed as if fate was against me, for all trace of you was lost, precious time wasted, and to complete my despair I fell ill with a fever which would have finished me but for my faithful Baptiste. Don't you love him for that? He asked, with a sneer. I love truth and fidelity in anyone. How did you find me at last? By the merest accident. When I was able to travel, I went to Hyde, thinking you were there. But the old man knew nothing of you, and after a stormy tete-a-tete, I returned to Paris, feeling sure you must be here. Most men would have employed a detective, but I dislike them, for they make inconvenient mistakes sometimes, and bring to light things that are better forgotten. Baptiste was my spy, and would have ferreted you out as surely as a hound, had he not seen you in the street and recognized you in spite of the veil. Tonight, when you went out, we came in, and now nothing remains but for you to forget and forgive and come away with me to enjoy the gay, free life you love. Dare you ask me? Yes, you dare anything. My only answer is if my grave stood open on one side and you upon the other, I'd go into my grave before I would take one step to meet you. Now leave me. You have no right to stay, no power to force me away, and alive I will not go. She expected a burst of wrath or some violent demonstration, but Tempest was too wise for that. He knew her too well, and looking at her with the one genuine passion of his life eloquently expressed in his fine eyes, he said in the tender tone few could resist, Do you no longer love me? She would have given worlds to have been able to answer no, but she could not. He saw her hesitation and knew that her heart was traitor to her will. Feeling sure that she would yield if he did not press her too strongly, he concealed the satisfaction this betrayal gave him, and without waiting for her reply said gently, You do, and in that fact is my hope. I have no right, I know, for I have deceived you. I will atone by lifelong devotion, but I cannot give you up. It is too late to undo the past. It is wiser to forget it and be happy. The fault was not yours, so why should you destroy your peace and mine by trying to atone for it in this stern way? The sin is yours, but the shame and sorrow are mine. The past I cannot retrieve. The future is still unspoiled, and I will not embitter it by any willful sin. Before I was innocently guilty. Now I should be doubly guilty if I went back to the gay, free life I love. Atone for the wrong you have done me by ceasing to tempt and trouble me. I will not yield, though you hunt me to death. Nor will I, Rose. If I were free, would you be my wife? He spoke with sudden purpose and watched the effect of his words with covert anxiety. An instant and indignant refusal rose to Rosamond's lips, but at a second thought checked it and made her say coldly, You cannot do it unless you give up the boy. I have given him up. An angry flash of sharp pain passed over Tempest's face. When and how? I'll tell you nothing but that the boy is dead. She asked for no proof of this assertion, but dropped her traitorous eyes and concealed the detestation that filled her heart. for necessity taught her dissimulation. Then you deceived your wife when you refused to exchange your son for your liberty? He shrunk and put up his hand. Yes, let it go. It worries me. It was no fault of mine. They exceeded my orders. It cannot be helped now. Marian will free me willingly since the boy is gone, and then I will marry you, Rose. I swear it. Give me till morning to think of this. It's too sudden. I must have time. Go, Philip. I'll answer you tomorrow. You promise me, and you'll not do anything tragical meanwhile? Escape will be impossible, for I shall engage the room below lest you try your old plan, and Baptiste will guard the door. We have a plausible tale for the curious, and you will be wise to think quietly and give me a kind answer tomorrow. I'll not kill myself, I promise that, for now I wish to live. He did not see her face. Her voice was low, her whole air changed, and he believed she would yield, if he was patient. Going to the window, he looked out. Nothing but a narrow slope of tiled roof lay between it and a fall to the street far below. That is safe if she's not a bird, he said with a smile, and opening the door he departed, saying hopefully, I shall come early for your answer. Let it be a happy one, my little Rose. He did come early, but the answer was an empty room.